Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena El-Sayali, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena El-Sayali, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on both TikTok and Instagram. This week on the podcast, we're going to be discussing Litha, which is the celebration of the summer solstice. Today, I also uploaded our Cancer season episode of the Jesus Witch podcast, so after you listen to this one, be sure to go listen to that and learn all about Cancer season 2022, the different astrological transits, and how to work with the energy that's going to be in the sky. Before we jump into the episode, I just want to remind you that the Jesus Witch podcast is on Patreon. Every single Patreon supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast gets episodes of the show a week early and ad-free. They also get extended show notes pages whenever it's applicable, and then there's other tiers of the Patreon that will help you with your Jesus Witchery education. I post my personal spells that I have created using Bible verses, as well as spreads to use with your tarot cards in order to connect with Jesus or Source in a more in-depth manner. I even have a tier where each month I send you some sort of happy mail, which has ingredients in it to create a spell, and then we will get on a Zoom together and have like a circle and cast this spell as a community. I also offer on my Patreon a tier where you get a one-on-one monthly call with me to discuss your personal practice and the way that Jesus Witchery is working for you. During that call, we'll discuss areas in your faith and in your practice where you would like to grow, and I will offer some suggestions to help you through that growth. But today, when this episode of the Jesus Witch podcast is live to the public, I will be uploading a little summary type spell for all patrons of the Jesus Witch podcast. I wanted to give all of our Patreon supporters this specific spell because I'm not going to be uploading episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast for about a week or so. I need some time to record season 3, get some interviews on the books, and, just create some more content for you. So in the meantime, I'm going to be giving patrons more spells and tarot spreads just to keep you guys saying thanks for supporting me while I'm taking a little break to record for you. But again, if you would like to become a supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast, you can click the link in the show notes page to check out our Patreon, and there's a couple of other ways to support the show listed in the show notes page as well, so you can check all of those out. And I really appreciate any of the support that I get for making this podcast, because making this podcast is pretty time consuming, and I have a lot goes into creating episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast weekly. So when you help support the show, that empowers my family to do the things that we need to do while I also can have the space to create. So I really appreciate all of the support that I've been getting so far for the podcast. But anyway, enough with me talking. Let's jump into this week's episode and talk about Litha. Litha is one of the 8 Sabbath of the Year holidays that are listed in the Wheel of the Year. Litha is celebrated on the summer solstice, which is towards the end of June in the northern hemisphere and towards the end of December in the southern hemisphere. This year, Litha is June 21st for the northern hemisphere. Litha notes when summer begins. It also goes by the name of midsummer, and this is also when the sun moves into the sign of Cancer in the northern hemisphere and Capricorn for the southern. But since I am northern hemisphere, I'm going to be talking more in northern hemisphere terms. So for me, I'm going to be celebrating Litha on the first day of Cancer season. It is also the longest day of the year, and actually at one point it just seems that the sun just hangs in the sky without moving, which the word solstice comes from the Latin word solstum, which literally translates to sun standing still. And if you listen to our Cancer season episode, we talk a little bit more about this particular idea of the sun standing still during the lore of Cancer, because that was actually taken into account when picking the symbolism for the crab. When we're considering the Wheel of the Year Sabbaths and celebrations, Litha marks a time when the seeds have been sown and begin to grow abundance until Lugasa, totally butchered that name. I apologize. Which is August 1st, and that celebrates the first harvest. From Litha, the days become gradually shorter until Yule, which is the longest night and shortest day of the year. Then after Yule, the days will start gradually growing again until we reach Litha. Litha is typically seen as a bright and exciting celebration. You're celebrating joy, you're celebrating abundance, you're celebrating the sun and the things that are like growing around you. You're also celebrating summer and the warm air and all the cool things that we can do in the summer that we can't in the winter. I mean, like, I'm a New Yorker, so like for me during summer, that's the time like I can go swimming, I can go sit outside and like feel the warmth, I can be barefoot all the time. Like, summer is a really, really, really bright and warm and happy time of year, whereas like Yule and wintertime is more depressing and cold. So I love this holiday, I love this season, and I am so excited to celebrate Litha. So ancient Celtics would celebrate Litha by having bonfires held on like high hilltops to celebrate the distance between the earth and the sun, since it's like highest at the point of Litha during the summer solstice. They would gather around these fires and sing and dance. The Celts also used this time to recognize their goddess Irene, totally pronounced that wrong. I am so sorry. And she's the goddess of love, summer, sovereignty, and fertility. Ancient Romans also used this as a time to celebrate. Instead of celebrating the Celtic goddess Ain, they celebrated Juno, who was the wife of Jupiter. She was recognized as the goddess of woman and childbirth and fertility. Vesta was also a very popular deity that was worshipped during this time because she is the goddess of the hearth, home, and family. And like, just astrologically speaking, and you can learn more about this in our Cancer season episode, Cancer, which is summertime, is very, very homey and rules over like the house. So it makes sense to me that Vesta was also an honored deity during this time and during like the transition of spring to summer. I also want to share a little bit about the folklore, like the more modern folklore around Litha. This is not personally what I believe or how I celebrate, because obviously I'm a Jesus witch, and we will discuss how I celebrate as a Jesus witch in a little bit. But I think knowing all this stuff and knowing the knowledge and learning how other cultures and other pagans and other people on different witchery paths celebrate these types of holidays is really interesting and can really like nourish our own practices and allow us to find things that resonate with us and adopt them for our own. So here's a little bit of the folklore of Litha. So neo-pagan paths will honor the Oak King and the Holly King as the rulers of the earth for each of their halves of the year. From Yule until Litha, it's said that the Oak King rules. On Litha, the two will battle for the crown, and it's then when the Holly King will triumph. The Holly King will rule through the summer and fall all the way until Yule comes back, and then this cycle will begin again. And like, listen, I hesitate to share this because it might be bad, but like, am I the only one when I think of the Holly King and the Oak King? Am I the only one that thinks of Dwight Schrute from The Office? Because I think of him, because he's definitely talked about this in The Office. So just want to give you a little bit of like a inside peek as to how my brain works. It is also said that on Litha, the Fae will come out to play. And there's a lot of different, like, lore surrounding the Fae. Some people believe that they're evil. Some people believe that they're good. I just believe that they were spirits created by Source, and they're here, and they're having their own experience here on the earth plane, and we can choose to respect them or not. So I personally have, like, a fairy garden that's in my yard, and the fairies, they know they're not allowed to come in my house, but they know that they're allowed to come in this one little spot of our yard, and there I have, like, flower seeds planted, and they've been actually starting to bloom a little bit recently, which is so cool. But I also put there like a little fairy bench and a wishing well and like a little yogi gnome and like all these cute little things for the Fae to like see and see that they're appreciated and welcomed here. So if you are working with Fae, this might be a good time to leave them an offering. I don't necessarily know if this would be a good time to invite them into your practice, because like there is some folklore that says that they become a little bit more mischievous on Litha and have tried to drag a human or two into their world during Litha. So if you're working with the Fae, like obviously use some protection, have boundaries, don't say thank you to them, cross your I's, dot your T's kind of things. Make sure to like have that grounding over yourself, But this is a good night to work with them too, if you already do. And now a quick break from our show to talk about a few different ways you can help support the Jesus Witch podcast. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast is by becoming a Patreon supporter of the show. Every supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast on Patreon gets access to our monthly community oracle card readings, as well as access to a secret Discord channel in the Jesus Witch Church. In that channel, you can leave any Jesus Witch questions or suggestions that you may have, and it's just a better place for us to connect as a Patreon community. We currently have 5 different Patreon tiers for you to choose from to help expand your knowledge on Jesus and Christian witchery. The first tier that we offer is the Mercury tier, and this provides written transcripts of each episode of the Jesus Witch podcast to make them more accessible and easier to take notes from. The next tier that we have is the Fool, and that provides early access to the Jesus Witch podcast as well as ad-free episodes. The following tier is the Magician tier, which helps to expand your Jesus Witch knowledge with tarot spreads to help you connect with the Abrahamic pantheon and monthly Bible-based spellbook pages. In the Hierophant tier, we go even further with Bible-based spell work. Each month, members of this tier get access to an additional Bible-based spellbook page. I also send you a mini spell kit every single month with the ingredients to cast your spell. With this tier, you also get access to a monthly spellcasting circle that happens over Zoom, where we cast the spell together, and it's a really fun time. Our final tier is the High Priestess tier. This tier gets everything from the previous tiers, as well as a one-on-one call with me over Zoom every single month to talk about your practice, where it's going, and what your goals are spiritually. Another way to help support the Jesus Witch podcast is by shopping at the Sun and Moon Jesus Witchery shop on Etsy. Over on my Etsy shop, I offer Talking to Jesus tarot readings, Christian witch mystery boxes, Bible-based spell oils, astrology readings, and so much more. You can also help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast by sending a donation directly to my PayPal or Cash App. You can find the links to both of those or any of the other ways to help support the Jesus Witch podcast in the show notes page. And a quick reminder, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to us on, and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps to get the word out about the show. If you would like to connect with me further, be sure to join our free Discord group, the Jesus Witch Church, and give me a follow on TikTok and on Instagram at Lena the Jesus Witch. Now let's go back to our show. So now let's talk a little bit more how I am going to be celebrating Litha as a Jesus Witch specifically. We learned a little bit about what Litha is, the history, and what different cultures used to do. So now let's talk about what, Jesus Witches could do. So firstly, as with all Wheel of the Year holidays, I first and foremost see Litha as a way to honor God's creation. This is where we're watching the changing of the seasons. We're watching the torch being passed from spring onto summer, from Gemini to Cancer. We are watching so many different miraculous movements in our natural world, and they should be honored as miracles because they are miracles. The way that our universe works, the way that our solar system works, the way that astrology works, all of these things is a fucking miracle. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. That'll make my little brain go like a little bit too much, but it's a miracle. That's what I understand about it, is that have you ever seen that TikTok side note? Oh my gosh. Have you ever seen that TikTok of have you ever seen how our solar system actually works? And it'll show you the picture that we all grew up with the sun in the middle and all the planets spiraling around it, yada, yada, good, right? So then this video shows you how it actually works, and it's that same model, except hurtling through space, really freaking fast. Oh my gosh, it is so crazy. If I find that TikTok, I will leave it in the show notes page. Oh, but thinking about that, I can't think about that. It makes my brain a little bit too So that's why I say this is a miracle. This needs to be celebrated. This needs to be honored. The fact that we are sustaining life on this giant rock that is hurtling through space is a miracle, and it should be honored, and that creation should be honored, and Litha is part of celebrating and honoring that creation. So some of the main themes of Litha, aside from honoring nature, that I've noticed are abundance, planting seeds, and working on your goals, having gratitude, and casting wishes. So this day I'm going to actually be doing a manifestation spell, and that's going to be the type of spell that I share on Patreon, is something to help you manifest with this more fiery energy, this more creatrix energy. So that's personally what I will be doing, like magic wise. This is also like a time traditionally where deities who are associated with the earth, the sun, fertility, hearth, the woodlands, animals, fae, all of those kinds of things, those are recognized, right? So let's talk about a couple of like deities and figures within the Abrahamic pantheon that we can honor that rule over these things. So for me, my goddess is Asherah. So I'm going to be working with her on fertility during the during Litha, and no, not baby fertility. I'm talking like creating fertility, right? I'm going to be asking her for motivation and for ideas, and like really asking her to bless the Jesus Witch podcast and the creation of it as I move into creating season 3, which actually lines up very perfectly with Litha. I will also be honoring Jesus during Litha. And I know I honor Jesus every day, but right, we're talking about deities that are representative of the sun. Jesus is the Son of God. And sun, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm going to work with Jesus on Litha. It's not like a super fancy explanation at all, but you know, I'm just saying, like, correlation wise, it works. So I'm going to be working on him. I'm going to be asking him to come into my manifestation spell, and I'm also going to be asking him for some more self-confidence. I've been dealing a lot with imposter syndrome and like not thinking that what I do is good enough, even though like I know it is, because you guys give me such awesome feedback, and like the things that you say to me truly warm my soul. But there's this voice in the back of my head is like, yeah, but you're not good enough, Lita. And that's like that's not right. You know what I'm saying? So during Litha, I'm going to really be planting seeds with Jesus, working on that confidence, and like walking into like my sun moment. You know what I'm saying? Where I can like really shine and like shine freely. Then, because Litha's a really great time to work with animal spirits, I'm also going to be honoring my dog Teddy spirit. He passed away on April 15th, which just so happened to be Good Friday. And we put him down specifically on Good Friday because we thought that that would be a good day for him to pass, because, you know, Jesus died on Good Friday too. Anyway, but I'm going to be working with Teddy's spirit, and, like, if I don't laugh about it, I'm going to cry. I'm going to be working with Teddy's spirit, like, invoking him for some protection work. He's really, like, he was a little, 25-pound Bichon Frise, but that dog was so ferocious. He was, like, the best guard dog you'd ever meet, and, I'm going to be asking him to spiritually guard me and, like, just honoring him more. I've been asking him to spiritually guard me, but I'm just going to honor his work and what he's been doing for me and how he's been spiritually protecting me during Litha. And on Litha, I'm also going to be tending to my fairy garden. You know, I might get them a little something else to put out in there. But just, again, just give a little bit of time to the fairy garden and just say, like, hey, I recognize you're here, and I'm glad that you are. I also just want to talk about a few other ideas of figures and spirits that you could work with from the Abrahamic pantheon that could be useful during your little celebration. So firstly, we have Saint Gianna Beretta Molla, who was the patron saint of infertility, fertility, pregnant women, and mothers. So if you're really working on like creating in that way, and honestly, if you're really specifically working on creating an actual like real life baby, she might be a good saint to call on. Then we have Saint Francis of Assisi, who was the patron saint of animals and the environment. Saint Gerard, who is the patron saint of children and childbirth, which again, like, I listed him because children, childbirth, that's all about creating energy and, like, you know, manifesting things. So you could work with him on that. I just also had to throw in Saint Gerard here because my son, Scott, his middle name is Gerard. After my dad's middle name is Gerard, so we got it from my dad, but he was my home birth baby, and I just thought it was very fitting that my home birth baby had the middle name of Gerard, who was the patron saint of childbirth. You know, it like all works. It's super cute. If you're working on home and hearth magic, you could call upon Saint Joseph because he's the patron saint of the home. We also have Archangel Gabriel, which is the archangel of fertility. Archangel Uriel is also associated with the sun, so if you would like to honor her for the sun, that's like a more feminine energy you could work with the sun. And then Eve, who's the first mom. So the first mother, she's a great one to work with during Litha for, again, creating. She's also good because, like, Eve is very earthy kind of like character for me. Very, like, you know, like walking naked and barefoot through the garden. Like, come on, like, can you get more of a grounded queen? You know what I'm saying? So she'd be a good one to work with too, especially if you're trying to be more connected to nature. Now let's talk about a few practical correspondences for Litha. So these are things that you can add into your spell work to just boost the energy of the day and have it be included into your workings. So firstly, let's start with the colors that are associated with Litha. We have gold, which is energy, power, prosperity, solar deities. So anybody who's like a sun god or goddess. So I'm going to be dressing Jesus's candle with something gold on Litha. And wisdom is also associated with the color gold. Green brings in abundance, calming, fertility, growth, new beginnings, and prosperity. Orange would be good for adaptability, communication, courage, creativity, energy, optimism, and success. A red is really good for anger, courage, creativity, desire, energy, fire, lust, passion, sexual love, strength, and willpower. White is cleansing, good for the nation, healing. It invokes innocence, peace, protection, and truth. Yellow is great for communication, creativity. It helps when you're doing dream work or happiness work, like trying to bring more joy into your life. Intelligence, learning, protection, psychic ability. It's also good for working with the sun and willpower. The main element that is honored during Litha is fire, and some herbs that you could add to your workings for Litha are mugwort, vervain, chamomile, lily, oak, lavender, fern, thyme, daisy, honeysuckle, and St. John's wort. So that is the gist of Litha, which is also the summer solstice celebration. I hope that you got a few ideas in here to help you celebrate this day. And if you would like to grab the manifestation spell that I am uploading for Litha on Patreon, click the link in the show notes page to check out our Patreon, and this spell will be available for all Patreon supporters. As always, anything else that we discussed in this episode today will be found in the show notes page wherever it is on your screen. I'm so used to like saying, put the comments or put the show notes page down below because of like growing up watching YouTube, you know what I'm saying? So every single time when I do this, I have to like catch myself and not use YouTube terminology because like YouTube raised me. Like, let's be real. YouTube, Hannah Montana, High School Musical, Disney Channel, that's what raised me. Let's do our verse of the day. I have my Words from Jesus Oracle, my 11 Words from Jesus Oracle by Doreen Virtue. And this one we have for today is forgive and you shall be forgiven, which is from Luke 6, verse 37. Thank you so much again for listening to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. If you didn't listen to our Cancer season episode, what are you doing? Go and listen to that now. But either way, I will see you in a few weeks for season 3. Bye.